One Piece fight sucks. Now, before you dislike or unsubscribe, wait, I have no subscribers. But for the one person that's watching this, please hear me out. One Piece is one of my favorite animes of all time. It has some of my favorite characters Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and your boy Arlong. The world building is peak and anime titties. I mean, like, who doesn't like some anime titties? Now, I'm about to say something you ain't gonna like. Before showing an anime, the fights are ass. Now, wait, please wait. Before I present my case, let me ask you a question. What makes a good fight scene? Better yet, what makes one memorable? Is it choreography, tension, brutality, consequences, or creativity? To me, all of these play a part to what makes a good fight scene, but what truly separates it and makes it memorable are emotions. Seeing my favorite characters fight for their morals, beliefs, or ideals leaves a long-lasting impression on me than two people fighting because it looks cool. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my cool fight scenes, but I tend to not remember them compared to the one that I have an emotional connection with. There's only one fight scene in One Piece I can truly say is memorable. Luffy versus the fairy. I mean, Lucci. It was incredible. Yes, the animation wasn't there and the choreography was mediocre at best, but what it did have emotion, tension, consequences, and the story that led up to this fight was simply, again, incredible. Robin losing her will to live due to the persistence of the world government wanting her head, and ever since a young age, everyone telling her she doesn't deserve to live, combined with the fact that she is afraid the closest people around her might be the very ones who betray her, she willingly turns herself in. All of this culminating in this amazing scene where Luffy makes her say what she forbade herself to say, to think, and to wish. She wants to live. She wants to go on more adventures. I can go on and how incredible this scene and art is, but to boil it down, we know why Luffy is fighting this fairy. He stands for everything Luffy hates: control, authority, order. Luffy ain't about that life. He just wants to ride the waves with his homie without any rules. He just wants to be free, the freest man in the world, the Pirate King. This fight wasn't easy though. Lucci pushed Luffy to his limit, threw everything he had at him, including. But Luffy kept getting up and up and up until Lucci had enough and hit him with a defibrillator, not to revive him, but to send his ass to the Shadow Realm. And it almost worked. Luffy was about to fail. But if he does, he loses everything: his dream, his crew, Robin, his purpose, but most importantly, his freedom. So he smoked them, literally, not metaphorically, rhetorically, poetically, or any other fancy way. He straight up smoked this man. But me explaining this to you doesn't bring justice to this arc, so please go watch it. Because after this, to me, all the fights don't hit the same anymore. They all felt dull, uninteresting, and especially that Doflamingo fight. I remember being so excited for this fight, even though the pacing of this arc was so shitty. Oh my god, I'm not gonna go into it. But I still hold out hope, maybe, just maybe they might pull it off. How wrong was I? This fight was boring. At times, it felt like it was wasting my time. Panning shots, cutting away, showing us people talk. This ain't no anime sport where exposition is warranted. Almost forgot. Reaction shot after reaction shot after reaction shot. A reaction shot of a blind guy. He can't see, so what is he reacting to? Just ruining the pacing of the fight. It takes you out of it. And the fight itself is uninteresting. It just boils down to two people hitting each other. There's no substance here. You would think both of them having two different devil fruit, their fighting style would be different, but it's not. Why isn't Doflamingo using his string to set up tracks or using them to create distance between him and Luffy so that Luffy will have to figure out a way to close that distance? Better yet, why isn't he using his string to control people so he can manipulate them into fighting the fight for him? That would add another layer of tension because this fight doesn't have any. Not a moment in this fight that I thought Luffy was in danger. And that's crazy because we literally saw Lucci cut a giant leg off with a string. And some of you guys might argue hockey, that's why he couldn't hurt Luffy, but that still shouldn't justify the fact that there isn't any tension here. You made one of the most terrifying villains into a punching bag. That's sad. Let me give you an example how this fight could have been. Ulvigen versus Karateka is one of my favorite fights in Hunter x Hunter. First time watching it, I didn't know who was going to win, even though in paper Ulvigen should win this fight. The way they wrote and choreographed this fight made me second guess myself every step of the way. Karateka trying to provoke Overgen to throw him off his game, while Overgen is trying to figure out what kind of nen user Karateka is. While trying to keep a level head, but again, Karateka not giving him that time to think and keep hitting him where it really hurts. His pride. Belittling him, insulting him. So Overgen changed his tactic. Instead of him going at him head on, he created a small screen and got his leg back. And it worked, catching Karateka off guard. But by then it was too late. Spider has already been caught on a trap without even knowing. There's a story that's being told in this fight, not verbally but visually. And I can't say the same thing with a One Piece fight. And that's a shame because the Devil Fruit power system is genius. For instance, there can't be two of the same Devil Fruit. So logically, shouldn't every single fight be different and unique? The possibilities are there. Opponents trying to figure each other's powers and weaknesses or intentionally misleading each other. Look, I'm not saying every single fight should be a chess match or Hunter x Hunter fight, but give me something to think about, something to come back and be wowed. Even the Katakuri versus Luffy fight, some might say the best fight in One Piece. I beg to differ, but it is better than the Doflamingo fight. For starters, there is a story happening here. Katakuri built up a persona that he's this perfect, calm, collected Giga Chad who can do no wrong to protect his family. Just for Luffy to cut his ass lacking, the facade shattered. He's just a goofy ass guy who loves eating donuts. Now he's trying to smoke Luffy to maintain that persona. You see, Katakuri sees Luffy as inferior to him in every way imaginable. Can't even hope to defeat him, yet he's having difficulties putting him down. What does that say about him? To me, this is what the fight is about. Everyone putting these unrealistic expectations on him and him believing in those expectations just for Luffy, who don't care what anybody thinks about him, to shatter all of that. Throughout the fight, Katakuri slowly gains respect for Luffy and starts seeing him as an opponent rather than someone who's beneath him. And eventually, Luffy freed him from the shackles of him trying to be something he's not. This all sounds great, right? This is just a small part in a bloated ass fight. There's other plots going on while this fight is happening. This causes a story to never manage to stand on its own because all of these plots intersecting with each other, creating this convoluted mess where you don't know what to follow or focus on. In turn, you emotionally disconnect yourself from the development Katakuri is going through, not because you want to, but because they won't let you. They keep interrupting me every single time I wanted to invest myself in this story, and I would have let it slide if the fight itself was good, but even then, it has its own problems. Now, I will say this, the way Katakuri was using his Devil Fruit and incorporating Haki was brilliant, but damn, this fight was too long. Way too long. This ain't a sprint, it's a marathon. I don't know where I heard this quote, but this embodies everything about this fight. Basically, this whole fight is Luffy gets hits, he gets back up. The first couple of times, it was cool, but the longer it went on, it became repetitive and monotonous. I wanted to pull the hair out of my cranium because I get it. He's trying to learn Future Sight, and Katakuri is better than him in every way imaginable. I wanted more. I wish Luffy could have figured out a way to bypass Future Sight. I know that defeats the purpose of Katakuri being an unstoppable being, but at least it will make the fight interesting. Earlier in the fight, Katakuri loses his shit when he saw Luffy saw him eating donuts. He loses concentration, allowing Luffy to get a couple of hits in. I wish we could have delved more deeper into this. Imagine Luffy taunting him, mocking him, degrading Katakuri mentally throughout this fight to get an upper hand. Because when it comes to strength, ability, and power, Katakuri is far more superior than Luffy. But at least this way, he will stand a chance. And I know this go against who Luffy is as a person, but when Katakuri inflicts a fatal blow to Luffy due to somebody else's actions, Luffy says, fairness isn't a given in a pirate fight. So why should Luffy fight fair? But that's not what we got. What we got was a long, repetitive, monotonous fight with no suspense, tension, or consequences. There's even a side quest in this fight. After using Gale Force, Luffy loses the ability to use Haki, and without that, he's basically butt-ass naked in this fight. And Katakuri saw that and was coming for that ass. And you would think at this moment the tension would be at its peak. And for a moment it was until this happened. This just ruined the tension, the pacing they spent building up in this fight. They throw out the window like it's a joke. Luffy never gets punished for using Gear Force, or we see him get himself out of the situation he put himself in. They just play it off like he just happens to find her. What's the point of you introducing something like this and never doing anything with it? It's like Oda is afraid to hold his characters accountable. People can literally get hit by explosions in the face and come out of it like it's nothing. There's a whole arc of people getting hit by lightning strikes, and it's like another Tuesday for them. This just makes me feel like anybody can survive anything in this world, therefore making any encounter devoid of any tension and suspense. Now, I'm not saying people need to die for there to be suspense, but at least have some stakes for me to care. Going back to the fight, the animation did get better, but I didn't care. Snake Man was hella cool, even though it came out of nowhere. I still didn't care. Katakuri finally laid his back on the ground. I didn't care. Because by then, I was mentally and physically clocked out. I was glad that it was over because I didn't have to spend another second of my time watching this fight. That's sad and disheartening to say because this fight had everything going for it to be the best fight in One Piece, and they fumbled it. That's funny because earlier fights in One Piece had tension, stakes, and I cared, but somewhere down the line they changed. And I think it's because of Haki. Before I talk about that, let's go back to the Devil Fruit. This will make sense. You see, there's three types of devil fruits: Paramecia, Zoan, and Logia. Out of these three, the Logia is the most powerful. It allows its user to transform themselves and everything around them into said devil fruit element, and normal attacks don't have any effect on them, basically making them invincible, unless you're using Haki. You see, to me, Haki is here to put these guys in check, so Luffy and the others could stand a chance against them. All said and good until you realize Haki is basic, simple. Not the good kind, but the not so good kind. Let me explain. There's three types of Haki: armament, observation, and conquer. Armament allows you to put armor around you, and observation is predicting people's movement, and conquer is putting people to sleep. There are some advanced Haki users, but even then, it still doesn't make up for the lack of creativity this power system have. It doesn't allow its users to use Haki in a creative or unique way to set themselves apart from each other. Everyone uses Haki the same way, making every single encounter predictable. Therefore, fight lacks no one's strategy and tactic. I truly believe the strongest Devil Fruit user can lose to a mediocre Haki user because one is using cheat code and the other isn't. Basically, butt ass naked. I hate to do this comparison, but the closest thing I can compare this to is Nen. It's kind of not fair because Nen is Haki but on steroids. Let's just focus on the Enhancer class because all of this is complicated and I'm not certified to do all of that. The class allows its users to enhance their natural strength or objects, basic and simple, like Haki, but one allows flexibility and the other doesn't. Let's compare Overgen and Gon. Overgen enhances his already absurd level of strength, almost making him unstoppable. Also, he has a technique where when he punches an area or a target, it generates a force equivalent to a missile, but there are restrictions. It can only be performed with his right hand, and it has to be a straight punch. And Gon has a similar tech, Rock, where he concentrates all of his aura into a powerful attack, but there are risks to this. It needs to be charged, and most importantly, it leaves himself vulnerable without any aura protecting himself. The way I'm explaining this to you makes you think Nen is inflexible. It kind of sounds like it's restricting, but that's the point. You see, Nen adhere to the belief of equivalent exchange. Something cannot be created from nothing to gain something. Something of equal value must be given up or lost. In Nen, the greater the risk, the greater the power. Freedom is there, but it comes at a cost. This is just a small part in a large power system. I haven't even got to Ten, Ren, Zetsu, Hatsu. They have their own advanced version of themselves, but that's not the point. Nen allow characters to be unique. The personality shine through their technique, therefore making fights unpredictable. Unlike Haki, where it does not allow its characters to be unique, therefore making every fight predictable. Some of y'all might say, what about the Devil Fruit? In my opinion, it didn't matter because before Haki was introduced, there were a lot of factors that can dictate a fight, matchups, or creativity. For instance, Luffy versus Enel. Luffy contained the properties of rubber and gum, making him resistant to electricity. Therefore, Enel's attack became inefficient or against Alligator Man. This fight had emotion, tension, consequences. Luffy almost died twice, but figured out Alligator Man's weakness was water, but still it was not enough, so he used his own blood to finish him off. As Saba older, it didn't matter. Sentomaru had haki. We didn't know at the time what it was, but even if Luffy was at 100%, it still wouldn't matter. Sentomaru would bully this man. He didn't have enough power to stop Kuma. Kizaru was way out of his league, and it does not matter how strong your devilful power is. The only way to stop a haki user is by having haki. I want to transition to the best fight in Hunter x Hunter, the closest thing to Luffy versus Katakuri. Before this fight started, we know Gon ain't winning this fight. Gon knows he ain't winning this fight. Ain't no way he was winning this fight. But that didn't matter because he was just here to get his lick back. The fight begins. Music stops. Gon runs at Hisoka, throwing all of the combos he can think of like he's in a fighting game. Hisoka unfazed, picking his attacks carefully, almost baiting Gon into a lethal blow. But Gon isn't too reckless. The fight goes on, exhilarating. It's almost impossible for Gon to get a hit. But then, pause. Just for Hisoka to turn Gon, he hasn't moved since the fight started. Gon was like bet, runs at him thinking about to do the same combo. Psych turns into Kyrie, man trying to take this man's ankle, step back. 3-pointer? This man threw a floor at him. Suddenly, bricks flying everywhere. Gon goes incognito and get his leg back. The moment that music stops, at the beginning, you're engrossed in this fight. Like you're one of the audience members who's watching this beautiful masterpiece unfold in front of you. Something I have not felt in a One Piece fight. Let's talk about Wano. When Wano started, it felt like I had a whiplash. The animation went from this to this. It was a fresh breath air. Everything looked exhilarating. And the music, some Beethoven ass shit. And just to top it off, it started with my boy Zoro. He was like, I smell blood. Whose blood? Yours! I had to hold back my excitement because ain't no way the animation looks this clean. I didn't want to get bamboozled. They gave us another one. Holy shit is happening. Oh my god. Everybody stay calm. Stay fucking calm. The animation actually looked good and consistent. For once they're actually letting the animators cook. It was short, but hey, I'll take anything I can get. For me, all of these scrimmages were just appetizers. Golden Ramsay was at the back cooking us a masterpiece, and I thought that masterpiece was Roger versus the Whitebeard Pirates. In my opinion, this is the worst fight in One Piece. In my opinion, again, this is the worst fight in One Piece. Before the fight started, we heard Whitebeard Pirates. The possibilities of what to come was running through my head. And it started good. Roger slashing Oden, who has been a menace throughout this flashback, was perfection, showing us that the king himself is on demon time. And then we get Whitebeard jumping through trees just to pull up on his op like he's Tarzan. And then this happens. Showing us that we're on a different level, the clash not even touching. Power so overwhelming it split the skies like they're gods amongst men. Nature is submitting to their will. The Pirate King versus the strongest man in the world. Incredible. After this, nothing happens. We don't get any insight into Roger's fighting style, his technique, or even how he compares to Whitebeard. Instead, Oda kept it a mystery. Why? This is where you go all out. 20 years of build-up. Why didn't you? Did I miss something? When everyone thinks about Roger versus Whitebeard, they think about this moment, which is not a fight. Everything that comes after this is forgotten because nothing happens. Marco versus Ryla, nothing happens. He stops him with his finger, cool, but nothing happens. This is why I say this is the worst fight in One Piece, because they robbed us of a masterpiece. This fight could have been legendary, not just in One Piece, but the animation community. But they robbed not just us, but the animators of an opportunity to create a masterpiece. That's who I really feel bad for. They had everything. They had it, but they didn't let them cook. I stopped watching after that, not out of anger, but out of sadness. It felt like nothing really changed. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. This was gonna be emotional how I stopped watching One Piece and all of that, but I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to hear that. But when I was at work, I was bored, so I wrote a counter argument to my argument. Yeah, here it is. One Piece fights aren't meant to be good fights, they're a moral trial. The mistake I made was judging One Piece fight by the same standards as Naruto, JJK, or Hunter x Hunter. Those series ask who is stronger and why, but One Piece asks who breaks first. not physically, but ideologically. One Piece rejects skill-based resolution on purpose. Most shonen fights are puzzles, outsmart an ability, exploit a weakness, adapt to a new strategy. One Piece deliberately refused that structure. Why? Because Luffy is not a technician. He's not meant to be. If Luffy went through planning, optimization, or a superior strategy, it would contradict his role in the story. Luffy does not represent competence. He represents uncompromising will. So fights aren't about how do I beat you. They're about can you break me before I stop getting up. That isn't lazy writing. It's a thematical choice. No consequences is the point. Luffy is an anomaly. My critique is valid. Luffy tanked absurd amount of damage. He survives things he shouldn't, and physical consequences rarely stick. But One Piece isn't interested in physical realism. It is interested in spiritual endurance. Each major villain represents a worldview. Crocodile, nihilism, Doflamingo, domination, Katakuri, perfection and repression. They should beat Luffy. They don't lose because Luffy outsmart them. They lost because their worldview collapsed under pressure. Katakuri losing by choosing to fall is the point. Katakuri cannot lose physically, so Oda makes him lose existentially. Katakuri is built on image, fear, perfection. Luffy exposed that perfection as a prison. Katakuri doesn't fall because he's weaker. He falls because he no longer wants to uphold the lie. That isn't a combat failure. It's a character resolution. Haki is vague because it represents will, not technique. Haki is inconsistent and poorly quantified intentionally. It isn't a traditional power system. It's a thematical meter. Observation equals awareness. Armament equals resolve. Conquest equals refusal to submit. If Haki worked like Nen, One Piece would stop being about freedom and start becoming about optimization. And you don't have to like that, but it is coherent. One Piece fights are endurance narrative, not technical ones. Some series ask what clever solution would the protagonist find. One Piece asks what happened with two beliefs colliding, neither backs down. That's why fights are long. Momentum resets. Progression feels slow because the story isn't about escalation, it's about attrition of ideals. This structure only works in One Piece though, because the world is mythical, the tone is allegorical, and Luffy is closer to a folk hero than a fighter. Translate this fight design into Naruto or JJK, it will collapse instantly. One Piece is closer to an epic poetry, fables, mythical trials than a modern combat anime. My critique is valid if One Piece is judged as a combat shonen. The counter argument is that One Piece rejects combat excellence in favor of moral endurance, ideologically collapse, emotional inevitability. The fights aren't puzzles, they're tests of fate. Within One Piece own logic, the fights aren't broken. They're doing exactly what they're designed to do. I read this. I read it again. I read it another time when I was at work because I was bored. So I wrote another counter argument because I just could not agree with myself. Themes alone does not excuse weak fight design. Everything above can be true and still not be enough. Indulge without escalation becomes repetitive. Yes, One Piece fights are about willpower, but willpower alone cannot sustain tension indefinitely. If the structure is Luffy he gets back up, enduring stops feeling inspirational and starts feeling mechanical. The audience stops asking, how will he overcome this? And starts asking, how long is this going to take? That's not a thematical depth. That's a pacing issue. Katakuri being too perfect breaks the fight. Katakuri is framed as faster, stronger, smarter, more skilled, better at Haki. That's fine until the fight refuses to evolve. Instead of a workaround or a structural shift, the solution becomes more endurance, more hits, more time. If Katakuri is unbeaten on every technical level, the fight demands a clever solution. When none arises, the fight loses its internal logic. Choosing to fall is not the same as being defeated. Katakuri choosing to fall is emotionally powerful, yes, but at a fight resolution, it's unsatisfying because Luffy does not surpass him. The power system never determines the outcome. Combat itself doesn't resolve the conflict. The fight ends not because Luffy wins, but because Katakuri decided to stop. I'm gonna say this one more time. The issue isn't that Katakuri falls. The issue is that nothing in the fight's structure changes until Katakuri chooses to fall. A great fight doesn't just end with meaning. It arrives at meaning through action. Here, the meaning is present, but the fight never earns it. Haki removes risks instead of creating it. Haki is defended as symbolic, but mechanically it removes consequences. Instead of if I do this, I risk losing everything, we get my haki will adapt. That kills unpredictability. If willpower automatically scales, tactics doesn't matter. Preparation doesn't matter. Mistakes does not matter. A power system should create problems, not erase them. Devil Fruit forced creativity and Haki replaced it. Early fights worked because Devil Fruit had clear limitations, built-in weaknesses, forced improvisation. Luffy had to think rubber versus lightning, water versus sand, and blood versus sand. The solutions were clever, logical, visually distinct, thematically expressed through action. Haki shortcut that process. Instead of problem solving, the fight defaults into endurance. That isn't an evolution, it's a trade-off. Symbolism still needs stakes. Even myths have rules. If injuries does not matter, battles have no cost, defeats is never truly possible, then symbolism loses weight. Endurance only works when failure is believable. Without risk, perseverance becomes noise. One Piece fight should not be defended solely as symbolic endurance tests, because endurance without escalation becomes repetitive. Symbolism without structure becomes hollow. Willpower without consequences removes tension. One Piece is not wrong to prioritize themes over tactics, but it is wrong to believe themes can survive without a functional combat structure. One Piece fights doesn't fail because they value story over fights. They fail when the story is used to excuse weak fight design. Before I end this, I just want to say I don't hate One Piece. I'm criticizing it because I love it so much. I stopped watching it during the Wano arc, not out of anger, but because the weekly release just burnt me out and life got busy. Somehow, this essay, through all of that, stayed in my head for 5 years. That's crazy. And making this, finally finishing it, it's like closing a chapter in my life. And I can't be more thankful. And I just want to say thank you for anybody who stumbled across this video. If you stayed through all of it, thank you so much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it.